Hello YouTube, welcome to a highlight reel original production, the Behind the Numbers series, the first in a 12-part series that goes behind the numbers.
Hello everybody and welcome to a highlight reel original production. This is the first in a 12-part series to coincide with the 365 project. Basically taking a look behind the numbers. That's the name of the series that I'm going to be doing. In essence, it's going to be a 30-day, or should I say like a month's worth of review basically, out of all the things that I've been doing in relation to the Fitbit and the 365 project. So I've got the laptop here, I've got the Fitbit app open, and we're just going to have a quick run through basically of all the kind of key areas initially for January, because this is the first video of the series, and we're going to do one for every month, just as a bit of a breakdown. I know I've been obviously putting the videos out there and people have kind of been, getting to keep up to date with how things are going and weight loss and stuff, all that good stuff. But I just thought it'd be an interesting look, is a little bit more of a sort of detailed breakdown of what I did for that week, how many, all of the factors that kind of go into it. And if it helps anybody, if you think, well, if Aaron's achieving weight loss on X amount of steps with X amount of calories and all that kind of information, it could be something that you could use to your advantage and possibly, implement for your own purposes, so to speak. Yeah, so less talky, more pointy. We'll get straight at it, shall we? Okay, so what we're going to do first then, we're going to look at a breakdown of the steps for January. We've got this on a weekly basis here. So, first week of January, from the 1st to the 7th of January, we had a total step output of 111,754. Now, it seems like a lot, granted, but in the grander scheme of things, I have done more. That's probably, I'd say, maybe like an average kind of week, possibly. I mean, looking at the numbers, the first day we had 20,962, followed up by 11,797, 11,930, 11,901. So as you can see, them first 4 days, 3 of them were only just over the 11,000 target. But then we follow that up with a 23,485, 17,471, 14,208. So it's a decent step output. Them couple of days at the start of that week were a bit low, but everything else was well above the 11, which we move into the second week. Going from the 8th to the 14th, see now this step output was 140,100. So the Monday came in with 11,929, 18,660 for Tuesday, 17,956 Wednesday, 21,211 Thursday, 37,381 on the Friday, 17,788 Saturday, 15,175 on the Sunday. I believe that 37,000 was a breaking of a personal best from what I remember of January. Yeah, I ended up pretty much walking all day and all night to get that, so I was really happy to break that milestone. The third week of January had 107,324 steps. So it's much less considering the week before, but as I say, that week before we did have that personal best breaking record day of 37,381 steps, so a slight loss in the total amount of steps. But I mean, we're looking at 18,800, 14,300, 11,800, 11,600, 18,800, 20,600 and 11,200. I've just kind of cut off the final units there just for speed. And then the final week of January, up until the 28th, we have 19,600, 12,400, 13,700, 11,700, 22,800, 23,900, 21,300. So for that last particular week, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday was where I got the majority of my steps in. And yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself. 125,801 steps was the total for that week. Yeah, it's over 100 on each week, over 100,000 steps. So that is good. That's kind of the where you want to be, I'd say. You know, it's obviously above the 11,000 target that I've set myself for the 365 project. I haven't actually been lower than that yet, because obviously that would be pretty bad in the grand scheme of things. But I'm happy with the number of steps that I got out there, especially that, as I say, that record-breaking 37,000 one. That was tough going to get that. Had to have a lot of grit and determination to definitely achieve this. So I hope that gives you kind of a ballpark figure of the kind of steps that I've been knocking out on a weekly basis throughout January to basically achieve the losses that I have. So the next area that I'm going to look at is weight loss. So you may have known or you may not have known, but I picked this Fitbit up game from last year in the summer. Basically I decided that I was going to try and track some activities because I started doing a bit more walking and that kind of stuff. And the weight just kept falling off as week after week after week. I think from that entire 3-month stint, or it was just over 3 months, I don't think I put on once. 1 week I was in calorie deficit every day, and yeah, every week it was another loss, and it was another loss, and it was another loss. I think from memory I may have maintained 1 week. I think I didn't lose 1 week, but I mean, you can't argue with weight loss every week, especially when that's ultimately the goal. I mean, when I first started this, I was 20 stone and 4 pounds. That was last year. Just in the run up until Christmas, I ended up being a bit medically unclear to compete, so to speak. And then Christmas happened, so I ended up cancelling the walk game, so to speak, until the start of the year to coincide with the 365 project. You know, a little bit of a challenge to set yourself, just to kind of push yourself, see how far you can actually go and see what you can actually achieve. And after Christmas and after the time off, the weight I was at the start of January, 1st of January, was 18 stone and 3 pounds. I believe when my lowest last year, I was 16 stone 12 and a half. So, I mean, it's almost, 16, 17, it's about stone 5 pound, maybe 6 pounds gain over Christmas. So that wasn't great. It kind of knocked things back a little bit. But as you've just seen with a little rundown of the steps there, you can kind of see a trend with the weight. So commencing weight the 1st of January this year, 18 stone and 3 pounds. For the second week of January, the weight day is on a Monday, as I'm sure you know if you follow the videos. The secondary week, my weight was 17 stone 9, so that was a 4 pound loss, which I was very happy with. Anywhere around the sort of 4 pounds, 4 pounds and above, I suppose, really is where you want to be. But yeah, happy with that. And week 3, so the third weigh day, should I say, was 17 stone 6 pounds. So that's a 3 pound loss for that one, which is again awesome. So yeah, the following weigh day for that was on the 22nd of January, and that was 17 stone 2 pounds. So again, another 4 pound loss. You gotta love it. You really do gotta love it. So the final weigh day of January, 29th of January, it was 17 stone 5, which is actually a 3 pound gain from the previous week. Yeah, I wasn't wasn't really happy with the gain. Obviously, you want to lose every week if you can, but I mean, it just makes you think that everything that you've done in that previous week was for nothing. I mean, thinking about it now, as of time of recording, it's a little bit past January, but I mean, I can't really pin anything down specifically as to why that was a gain. There may very well have been an increased calorie sort of intake and maybe a reduced water intake, because I believe they're quite key in maintaining sustained weight loss. But yeah, the final weigh-in of January was 17 stone 5 pounds. So overall, from the beginning of the year, though, looking at those figures, it was 18 stone 3 on the 1st of January. And then come the 29th of January, it was 17 stone 5 pounds. So nearly a stone in a month, which you cannot really argue with. You've got to be happy with those figures, which I am. It's Monday is a bit of a weird day. It's like you think, oh, I'll just jump on the scales. What's the worst that can happen? But like I say, mentally it can just derail you a little bit, and especially if you really think, I've put the effort in, I've really tried to push myself, but when you see it go up, you're like, not ideal, not ideal. One area that I'm going to look at here also for January is the miles travelled per week, which it's a nice little indicator. If you know that you've knocked out, say, I don't know, 70 miles one week and then 30 miles the next week, you think, well, I did twice as much from one time to the other, so you think it would affect what you would have weight loss wise. Start of the year, 1st of January, for the first week of January was 47.65 miles. Excuse me. The second week being 59.89 miles, so there was an increase in week 2 over week 1. Then the third week of January, we have 45.77 miles, so again slightly reduced from the previous week. And then the final week, going up to the 28th of January, we had 53.58 miles. So it kind of goes up and down. It's not as constant as maybe as you'd think. You've got sort of certain walking routes and places you go, and you think, well, if you go them same places, surely the output's going to be the same. Obviously, every day is different, but it just gives you a bit of an indication as to, again, the kind of distances that I'm going through to be able to maintain the loss that I have throughout January. It's obviously the more the better I feel, the lower the numbers are, the less chance you've got of keeping a loss and having that loss come on the Monday. So I like to try and keep it high. I think looking at the numbers as well, let's have a look. So yeah, looking at the numbers, we've got in that first week of January, the highest amount of miles in a day was 10.11 miles. So 10 miles in a day. Obviously, I was at work at this point, so having to do a bit of work and then going home on an evening and then doing the walks on there. The second week, we had a top mile day of 16.08, which I believe coincides with my 37,000 personal best smashing, which we covered on the steps section. The third week we have a highest total of 8.86 miles, which is the lowest of the highest so far, if that makes sense, the lowest of the highest. And then the final week, week 4, we had a top mile output of 10.39 miles. So it is a bit of a mixed bag. There doesn't seem to be any pattern in relation to, the date. Is it a specific day where I seem to be getting most of these miles in? Is it a weekend? Is it, is it a certain day? I know when I do the wrestling pay-per-view watches, which is every couple of weeks, every 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, normally the Mondays used to be the worst day because I'd be pretty much, watching them after work, getting what I could in at work, going to watch that. I mean, sometimes they were 2-3 hours long, and then by the time I was finishing, it was looking at like maybe 9-10 o'clock at night, and you don't really want to be trying to get 6,000 steps in in that kind of time scale, especially when you've had a long day and all that kind of thing. So it's all these things you've got to factor. I feel into trying to get it in. It's all about making time. It's all about, oh well, I can't walk 6 miles. It's like, well, instead of thinking I can't walk 6 miles, maybe people can have the attitude of, can I walk 6 miles, as opposed to I can't. And it would be surprising. You'll find you'll get them in. I used to be a big advocate of drive everywhere, but not so much now. Definitely not. Definitely not. Especially with the results you see, and you can't argue. Apart from that 1 week in January where there was a gain, which I think is the first gain I think I've had since using Fitbits. All the stuff I did last year was losses, and I think it was 1, maybe 2 weeks where I maintained, but that week was a gain. So you can either go one or two ways. You can either think, oh no, that's it, everything's over, or you can kind of think, right, well, I'm going to redouble my efforts now, make a definite loss for the following week. And I think that's the way I went with it, to be honest. It was it's a mental attitude. You've got to think, well, I'm not going to let it get to me. I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm going to definitely go at it harder and make sure that I get these steps in and make sure that I travel this distance to then make sure that, ultimately I achieve results on Mondays. I thought what we could look at now is calorie intake for January. Important, as well as the steps, is of course calorie intake, which you can also track through the Fitbit app. Now, all I can really say with this, it's as accurate as possible, in that, if I'm eating food that I'm preparing myself, I can obviously weigh this food. So using the app, I find it, if you say you've got, like, I don't know, 400 grams of potatoes and, I don't know, 200 grams of vegetables, then it's easier to get a more accurate calorie representation of that because you've got the exact measurements. If you just say, no, I don't know, I'm going out and I'm going to grab I don't know, a sandwich of something, or maybe something else, where you might not be able to scan the barcode, because that's also another way of logging these calories, where you can scan the barcodes. You've got to kind of do a bit of guesswork, but I always try and go over if I'm going to go that way. So, I might eat something like, I don't know, a Scotch egg, for example, but might not have had the wrapper, or, it might not have been able to weigh it or something like that. So you've got to kind of just guesstimate a little bit. You can search vaguely for these items, but it might say, a large Scotch egg, a regular Scotch egg. So you've got to kind of guesstimate as much as possible when you don't have the exact readings. But that being said, I do, everything I am eating, I'm not cheating. I'm not like having a pizza and then just not putting it in. So you've got to kind of weigh it up. If you don't use it properly, then there's no point using it at all, because it's all very well and good saying, I log what I'm eating, but then if you're not doing it correctly, or you're not doing it to try and maybe fudge the numbers a bit and make it look like you're keeping to your targets and your limits, then ultimately the numbers that get spat out are going to be all out of whack. So with that being said, just a little caveat, I just wanted to get that in there first. We can have a look at our January calorie intake averages for the week, and I do have a limit. The way how I'm doing it personally, I'm sticking to 1,800 calories a day if possible. If I'm going over that, then I'm thinking to myself, I don't really need to be eating this kind of thing. Obviously there's days where you overeat and you do kind of go over that limit, but you'd like to think that other days you might not eat so much and kind of balance that out. So the first week of January, my calorie average intake was 1,503. The highest for that particular week, the highest day, was 1,610. And the lowest being 1,040. So there was a bit of a range there of a couple of hundred calories intake. When I first started, you're doing work, so I was having breakfast, I was having lunch at work, I was bringing it in. All of that stuff I was logging before I even had a bite. I could log my breakfast, log my lunch, and it was just literally when I get home on an evening, like, what do I have then to kind of, make up the balance. But for that week, I was 300 calories on average under what my top end limit was. So in that respect, that was good. The second week, we had an average of 1,574, so it's a slight increase over the previous week. And my top end calorie intake was it wasn't. It was 3,040 that day. So wow, yeah, I did overeat that day, definitely. It would seem, but for example, to balance that out, and I know it's probably not healthy, so to speak, but my next day after the 3,000 calorie intake was a 576 calorie intake. So, I mean, if you're doing it 2 days, 1,800, that's 3,600, right? And if you're adding them two together, that's 3,570, oh, just over like by 10 calories. So, yeah, I mean, you've overate, you've underate, but ultimately, over the 2 days, it should be fine. It should be fine. Should be. Famous last words. Week three's average of January, the third week, we have is 1,660. So again, it is a slight increase. I'm not sure if this was because of, when I've been pushing myself, especially like I say that Friday where I beat my personal best. I felt like I've earned a bit of additional food, maybe, if that's a way of thinking. Like, oh, I've just walked 10 miles. Yeah, maybe I'll have 2 sandwiches instead of 1. Just I don't know. It might be a subliminal sort of subconscious thing. But for that week, we had a top calorie intake number for a day of 3,672. So I mean, that's almost double in a day. That's actually insane. But again, to sort of counteract that, one of those days was 390, and I mean, that's way too low. That's way too low. I mean, what did I eat that day? Can we find that out? I think we can, So literally all I had to eat was 2 packets of sort of cheese curls, like quavers, I suppose, and 2 ham thins. Yeah, that's not enough. It's not enough. Not enough. And the final week's average was actually over. It was over the 1,800, which I try to avoid at all costs. It's there for a reason. I know it's a lot below the recommended amount of calorie intake per day, obviously taking it as an average, but yeah, 1,965 was the week's average, and the highest day of calorie intake for that week was 3,156. But again, a lower limit of 1,231. So yeah, you've got to kind of take it all into consideration. You could overeat. You could eat more than you are targeting calorie-wise, but then if you're knocking out a 15-mile walk, you'd like to think that that's still going to put you in deficit for your calorie burn. It's kind of a bit strange when you think of it logically. Sometimes it seems as though you should see big results, you should see small results, and sometimes the scales are a little bit, I don't know. It seems like they've got a mind of their own and they just put out their own numbers. But I'm not going to argue. I've lost, as I say, nearly a stone in that first month, and it's as long as it keeps coming off, I'm really happy. So I'm not going to argue. I'm really not going to argue, to be honest, any more about it. I'm going to move on to the next one. The next section we've got is calories burned, which is I like to try and cover as many bases as I can, just to show you again the kind of figures that I'm putting out to sustain the loss that I have been getting. I know a lot of people have kind of noticed and sort of say, you're losing weight, you look really good, and things like that, which is good. So this is why I'm doing it. I'm just going to try and share my methods and see if it helps anybody else. The first week of January, so this is calories burnt. So this is going off the tracker when you've been doing your walk and been doing your sort of exercises. It's keeping a track of your heart rate and stuff, and it's calculating your calories burnt. So for the first week of January, we had a calorie burn of 30,045, which seems quite a lot really, but you've obviously got to take calories into account and stuff like that. The way I look at it is if you're in a calorie deficit, then you're going to lose weight, right? If you've got more calories getting burnt than you've got going in, then overall it's going to start using your body's store of, fat and whatnot to get the job done. So yeah, the second week we had a burn calorie figure of 31,876, which is a slight increase from the first week. Again, I think this is factoring in that personal best breaking walk that I did of that week. So a little bit of an increase there. The third week was 28,220. So it's the lowest of the month so far. The final week being 30,534. So you can see it's around the 30,000 mark, I'd probably say on average. That third week dipped below 28,000, but then the week prior to that was a bit more, so that was 31. Yeah, that's pretty consistent, really. I'd say it's if you're doing anything less than 28, which is what I was on there, then I probably think you need to up it slightly. But again, it all factors in your food, your water, all that kind of good stuff. Now, this is an area that I've noticed is an area for improvement. Really, I used to struggle. I'd set a water target of 2.5 litres a day, and I struggled with it. I'd really tried to keep up with it as much as possible, being at work and whatnot. And I was doing all right at the start, and I was pushing myself. I'm thinking, yep, just drink more water, drink more water, drink more water. But I struggled with it, so I'm not sure of the exact date, but I actually lowered the limit to 2 litres instead of 2.5 litres, and saw dramatic improvements. So, looking at January, the first week of January, we had an average of 1,428 millilitres. I only hit in fact I didn't of that first week. I didn't hit any of my water targets that day. 2,500 wasn't achieved. The closest was 2,000, and that was, sorry, this is in millilitres, 2,000 millilitres or 2 litres. That was done on the Sunday of that week, so I didn't even get it once, which it does help. I think it really does help keeping your water sort of intake in check. It definitely helps with the weight loss. Week 2, we had 1,571 milliliter average. Again, the highest I got was 2,000 one day of that week. So it's difficult. It really is difficult. And then the third week, we start hitting a few targets. So the average is higher. It's 1,964 milliliter average for the week. And on 3 days that week, I got over 2 days I got 2,500, and one day I got 2,750 millilitres. So 3 days out of the week, I got the target. So it's starting to get there. Definitely was. And then the final week of January, we had an average of 1,464 millilitres. And 2 days out of that week, I hit my water target, and one day it exceeded it by 500 mils, so that was 3,000 millilitres and then 2,500 earlier on in that week. It's an area that I marked for improvement, and you may have seen in my videos that I kind of done that intentionally, and I definitely think since I've reduced that to 2,000 millilitres or 2 litres, that it's easier. It seems a lot easier. Well, here we go, look, he's the proof's in the pudding. I can drink one of these, for example. This is 750 millilitres. Do that in the morning, and then on the evening or in the afternoon do the same, and then that leaves me with literally a 500 millilitre water intake for the rest of the day. It just means you've got to go to the toilet more. You know, it's simple, basic kind of how things work. You drink lots of water, the water's got to come out. So that's something to factor in. You are constantly going to have to go to the toilet the more that you're drinking this water, but ultimately it flushes you out. And yeah, it's now been reduced, my limit, to 2 litres instead of 2.5 litres, and I believe I've had a lot more success with it. So I'm going to keep that as it is, because having targets that you could achieve, I think, helps you more, rather than having targets that are almost out of reach, but I think it has a detrimental effect. It kind of works against you, and you kind of think, well, I can't hit it, so why should I try? Um, so I changed it, and I think it was the right call. It was the right call. One last area that I'm going to look at on this little series is active minutes. So when your tracker is tracking that you're doing something, walking, running, swimming, biking, whatever it may be, in my case, the majority of the time is walking, it will log that, and so you can basically see how active you've been over the period as well, from what the tracker has captured. So I've got a little breakdown of that for January as well. The first week of January, we're looking at 1,156 minutes of active time. So time where the tracker's picked you up and said, yeah, you're walking now, we're going to count this, or you're running, or you're doing what have you. Gemma May's ready to roll, just getting notifications through. Hello, Gemma. 1,156 minutes activity on the first week. The second week it increases to 1,217. Again, you've got that personal best smashing day in there. That was 305 active minutes, which is nearly double. Well, not quite double, but nearly double any other day for that week. The third week it goes down actually, so active minutes was 930, so we've dipped below the 1,000 minute mark. Yeah, not ideal, not ideal. The final week of that month we have is 1,118 active minutes, so again that's crept back up. But it looks as though from 1,100 to 1,200 would be the kind of band that I'm aiming for. Again, none of this is guaranteed. It isn't dependent on entirely on what you do. If you end up just scraping, or in my instance, just scraping my daily target 11,000 every day, normally because of the weather, for example, or when you've got work commitments and you've got to stay late and you don't have as much time to do what you need to do, it can take a hit. But then when you've got your days where you're not so busy and you have got a lot more spare time, that can obviously go up. And I don't really have an active goal per se. Like, I know it's collaborating all these figures and saying this is how much you've done for the week, but I think it's 4 days out of the 7 I've got currently set to be classed as being an active day. But as I'm doing the walks every day, I'm hitting 7 out of 7, so I mean that's all right in that respect. So that's going to wrap it up now for the January Behind the Numbers series. I hope that you found the information that I've presented to you helpful, interesting, something that you can take away and have a bit of think about if you want to, maybe implement this kind of stuff for yourself and see if you can begin your own weight loss journey. Yeah, we've got steps, calories burnt, calories in, water intake, active minutes, weight loss. We're going to keep a track of all these things going forward, so we're going to have a February edition of Behind the Numbers to go over the February numbers. And yeah, I mean, once every month we're going to bring this out to basically review that month's worth of figures, and it should give a bigger picture overall of my progress, how I'm getting on, and yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. It'd be a good way to see if you could recognise trends and, sort of, well, this month I'd managed to do this, whereas that month it was slightly different. It's just a bit of an interesting insight, I feel. It's all very well and good giving people a weekly update saying, yeah, I've had £2 loss, but if people can say, well, actually, to get that £2 loss, he's had to do, 120,000 steps, average a weekly intake calories of 1,400, have an average water intake, say, of like 2 litres, 2.5 litres, travel, say, maybe 50, 60 miles to do it, it kind of puts a bit more of a perspective on it, and it's something that I just felt would be interesting to share with people. So if you found it interesting, if you enjoyed the video and you want to see some more of this as we're going forward, give me a like on the video, that would be appreciated. Anything you want to talk about of any of the numbers that I've just brought up there, feel free to leave a comment. Absolutely, I have no qualms in answering any questions people may have that could potentially, unlock your potential to get the results that you may need. Again, people may not have found this of much use, but I just thought that I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to keep on going. And you know what I mean? It's exciting times. By the time the end of the year comes around, the 365 project's over. I'm going to be a completely different person. I think by the looks of things, I should look completely different, and I should have had quite a significant weight reduction, and my health should have improved. Everything should be going like for the good times. Everything should be better, and it's going to take a little while. Obviously, it's a year. It's 365 days, but I'm looking forward to it. So again, yep, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in next month's Behind the Numbers video. Thumbs up, people.